So to end the show today, we are going to be talking about the NBA, some basketball. We're completing the trifecta, ladies and gentlemen. We talked about football, we talked about baseball, now it's time to talk about basketball. I have completely changed my mind on the NBA play-in tournament. Completely. I normally, it's very faux pas for anybody who does any type of debate content or makes opinions or is a media analyst or is a commentator on sports. Regardless, if you're creating content in which opinion is a huge part of it, it's very faux pas to raise your hand and say, I was wrong. That's why you'll very rarely see it on some of those heavy debate shows on your favorite sports networks. It's very faux pas to do that, but I am always one to say I was wrong. I was completely wrong about the NBA play-in tournament, and I was genuinely excited and entertained throughout the entire thing. And if you've been living under a rock, the NBA play-in tournament was unanimously approved in the offseason by the Owners Association. Or I don't know if it's the association, but it was unanimously approved by the owners. And it's a play-in tournament in which the 7 through 10 seeds in each conference will compete with one another in a smaller tournament to secure the 7th and 8th seeds for the NBA playoffs. So in the case of what happened last night, the Warriors lost to the Lakers in the 7 and 8 game. They will be playing the Memphis Grizzlies, who beat the San Antonio Spurs in the other game that day. So 7 and 8 play each other. The loser of that game plays the winner of the 9 and 10 game, while the loser of the 9 and 10 game gets eliminated completely from the playoffs. And when this was announced earlier this year, or in December, originally I was like, this seems so unnecessary. This seems like a replication of the bubble. This seems completely unnecessary, and over the course of the season, I found more reasons to not like it. And it's kind of revolving around the Lakers, rather. I was just hypothetically imagining a situation in which the Lakers, who on paper are one of the best teams in the NBA, they are finals contenders, they're finals favorites, they're one of the best teams. Anthony Davis and LeBron James are money TV, they're incredibly fun to watch, and when they're playing together at the highest peak of both of their abilities, they're probably the hardest duo to stop in the NBA, apart from maybe Steph and Clay when they're both healthy, but obviously they're both dominant for different reasons. LeBron and Anthony Davis are athletic specimen who not only are gifted passers and they can shoot the basketball, but their size and their rim awareness is incredible. Whereas Steph and Clay are just monsters at shooting basketball from ridiculously deep ranges, right? But hypothetically, and the way that the season was going for the Lakers just kind of made me hate the play-in scenario even more and more, because you have a team like the Lakers that are one of the best teams in the NBA, but they're continuously losing contention in their standings in the West because Anthony Davis and LeBron James were hurt at the same time. So I was just imagining and loathing a situation in which the Lakers, somehow, one of the best teams in the league, were not in the playoffs specifically due to injury. And obviously people are saying, well, hey, man, that would have happened, regardless. The drop in the standings would have happened regardless of whether the play-in tournament was a thing. But I just personally would have hated it if the Lakers, who, had a 7th seed, who still would have been in the playoffs and would have had both their players returning and would have been fine and could have made a run, I would have felt horrible and kind of miffed off as a basketball fan if somehow the Lakers lost both their play-in tournament games due to injury. And obviously Anthony Davis and LeBron James returned in time to prevent this from happening. They have secured the 7th seed and they'll be moving on and playing the Phoenix Suns in the playoffs. But imagine a world in which they were eliminated from the playoffs and we as the sports fan were robbed of, Lakers versus Clippers, Lakers versus Nets, any potential basketball matchup that we could have gotten just because the Lakers were forced to play in a play-in tournament in which all their star players were hurt. That's kind of the scenario that I was imagining in my head, and it kind of just made me dislike the idea of the play-in tournament. But having watched all of the play-in tournament games over the past few days, apart from Indiana versus Charlotte, which was a complete blowout and, not interesting at all, every single play-in tournament game was pretty spectacular. I was extremely entertained in it. I was not expecting to be as thoroughly entertained as I was, and I've changed my mind completely. And every single game that I saw over the past few days felt like a Game 7. It had that Game 7 energy that I was not expecting, and I really, really enjoyed it. It had basically the climax of a 7-game series without the story. And obviously the story of a 7-game series is what adds to the Game 7, so it's not like it was a true quote-unquote Game 7, but it was almost like a miniature Game 7, so to speak. I was really impressed, and I did not expect myself to be so invested in these games. Boston versus the Wizards was incredibly entertaining. Boston in itself has been a story this year with how they've kind of declined. Memphis versus San Antonio was a good game. The Lakers versus the Warriors was probably one of the best games I've seen all season. And obviously, that probably helps things when it comes to viewer retention and viewer praise, like I'm giving the praise for the playing tournament right now. But it's a pretty genius idea. You get miniature Game 7s, you get over the course of 3 or 4 days, so you get the heightened tension of the added stakes of what a Game 7 is to move on to the playoffs. You have that added tension. And, without the long series, without the time wasted, it's great for viewership, it's great for the business side of things, and it's kind of genius. Now, maybe this is just a reactionary take because the play-in games were so good, and you can definitely make the argument that if the play-in games were really, really bad, or there was a bad result, as I suggested, or kind of alluded to in an alternate universe in which the Lakers lost both their play-in games due to injury, and one of the best teams throughout the season who just really got unlucky are now out of the playoffs, and we as basketball fans wouldn't get all the great matchups in the playoffs, right? Maybe it's a reactionary because everything went smoothly and everything was a favorable outcome, regardless of who you root for. Maybe that's a reactionary side of things, and you can absolutely make the argument that if things went poorly, that maybe my argument or my mind wouldn't have changed. But as it stands right now, I was really impressed by the play-in tournament. I think it's a great idea. I think we got a bunch of miniature Game 7s, and the fact that we got lucky in the sense that, hey, Lakers versus Warriors was an incredible game. Maybe, I don't know, just maybe I shouldn't be so quick to judge it next time. So we'll see what the retention of the play-in tournament is, or the ramifications moving forward, whether or not we'll see it next season or the season moving forward. What did you think of the play-in tournament games? Let me know. I'm interested to see what you thought. That's the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen. I got to get packed, got to get going, got a vacation to go to. So thank you so much for listening. This has been the Hard-Headed Sports Podcast, episode number 43. My name is Nick Ryan. With that all being said, stay hard-headed, but have a nice day. Hey folks, thank you so much for listening to this segment from the Hard-Headed Sports Podcast. If you enjoyed this segment, make sure that you drop a like on the video and a comment. It helps me out a bunch. And if you're interested in watching more segments like this from the show after the show has been completed, you should definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you're interested in listening to the entire show in its full-length entirety, you should listen to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Once again, thank you so much for watching the video. My name is Nick Ryan, and I will see you all again very soon.